At this point, the Venn diagram of supporters of Israel and anti Semites is pretty much a circle. And it makes you wonder how some of these apologists, some of these Israel supporters, would have responded had they been around in the late 30s, early 40s, and news of a genocide was coming out of Europe and they're hearing about it in the United States. It makes you wonder how they would have reacted. Well, I have here a glimpse of how one of them would have reacted. His name is Stephen Bunnell, aka Destiny, and this is him defending IBM for having been complicit in the Holocaust.
What do you mean complicit in the Holocaust?
Well, what I mean by complicit in the Holocaust is like those numbers that are tattooed on the arms of some of the Holocaust survivors. Those are what are known as Hollerith numbers, as in the Hollerith tabulating machines, which were manufactured and distributed by IBM. You could see some of them, some of those original machines in the Holocaust Museum. These machines were used to identify individuals of different races and designate which one of them would have their property seized and which one of them would be fed and how much they would be fed and where they would be sent and ultimately what would be done with them. When I say complicit, I mean Thomas Watson, the head of IBM, was awarded the Order of the German Eagle by Adolf Hitler for keeping the trains running on time. Watson worked closely with Hitler in Berlin, overseeing the sales of these machines, the distribution of these machines, and he made sure that they were customized to fit the Nazis' purposes. And mostly he was there, though, to make sure that all the profits were properly collected. And when U.S. involvement in the war made this business relationship illegal, Watson continued to work directly with Hitler through a subsidiary in Geneva. Complicit means IBM was directly involved in the mechanisms of the Holocaust from its inception in 1933 all the way to the end.
I know what they did, but
Well, if you know what they did, then why did you ask, dude?
but I don't even know how relevant it is or how much I care. What is the implication here? So some company, right? So Volkswagen and Porsche literally built tanks and planes and shit for fucking Nazi Germany. But I don't think these companies are the same companies that existed 70 years ago. I don't think that these companies are just waiting, biting at the chops to start.
Volkswagen provided transportation, and the machinery for the German war effort, and they used slave labor. And what they did was they hired a independent historian to research the extent of their complicity, and they paid out reparations in the millions to survivors. They've been far more transparent than IBM was, and IBM has neither affirmed nor denied their culpability at this point. And if there was any justice in the world, those survivors and their descendants would pretty much own IBM. And the fact that you don't care is the point, Stephen. You don't care. And people should know that. And people should keep that in mind and note that when you accuse Jewish college students who are simply calling for a ceasefire, when you call them anti-Semitic, it should be noted, it should be very clear that you don't care about anti-Semitism.
But this is like such a weird virtue signal to like this company.
There's that phrase again, virtue signal. And when you hear a right-winger use that term virtue signal as a pejorative, it's a sign of sociopathy. It implies that any show of empathy for strangers is entirely performative. For example, Destiny will accuse people like Emma Vigeland or Hassan Abbey when they shed tears for images or stories of children dying in Gaza. He will call those crocodile tears. And that in fact, he would say that in fact, the people shedding those tears are more responsible for those deaths than the very people who pulled the trigger.
Wait, so did we even know that? When was the first concentration camp discovered?
Clack, 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 clack,
By
clack,
the
clack.
West. It was 1944.
Communists killed in Germany, April 13th, 1933, the Associated Press. Dachau, Germany, April 13th. Guards killed 3 communists and wounded 1 who were attempting to escape from a, wait for it, concentration camp. Americans knew about Dachau back in 1933. Here's some other stuff that was reported in the Western media. Book burnings, race laws, enforced boycotts of Jewish businesses. There was an incident of thousands being killed by firing squad. By 1942, I believe it was, the news had hit the United States that 1 million Jewish people had been killed, murdered. Anybody who had read Mein Kampf, and I'm sure the press did plenty of reviews, I'm sure that book was widely distributed in the United States. Anybody who had read that book knew what Hitler's intentions were if he had ever gained power. IBM certainly knew, because they had an office in the Warsaw Ghetto where 80,000 Jewish people were killed. I saw a movie recently called The Great Dictator. It's a Charlie Chaplin movie. And that movie was made in 1940. There was a scene where they try to lynch Charlie Chaplin for being Jewish. After vandalizing his barber shop. It took place in a Jewish ghetto. Most of the movie took place in a Jewish ghetto. There was conversations in that movie about mass extermination. There was conversations about poison gas, and in the last half hour, in the third act, I guess you would say, Chaplin escapes from a concentration camp. Now, no one really knew the extent of the numbers. They knew that there were numbers. They knew that there were big numbers going on, but they didn't know the extent. But we don't know what the extent of the deaths in Gaza are. I mean, last anyone checked, it was 30,000. That didn't count the people in the rubble or the missing people. Johns Hopkins said Johns Hopkins estimated that there'd be 85,000 killed in 6 months. But that was in February. Americans knew what was going on in Europe in the 1930s and the early 40s. They just didn't care. They felt about Jewish people the way Density feels about Muslims, and probably the way Density feels about Jewish people. 85% of Americans were against allowing Jewish refugees in from Europe. And I have no doubt that if Stephen was around back then, he would have been among that 85% of Americans. He probably would have called the news of genocide a lie spread by leftists. And if anyone ever referred to Adolf Hitler as a Nazi, he probably would have said something to the effect of, hey man, just because you disagree with someone, that doesn't make them a Nazi.
So let me pull back and show you where we're at, okay? And then maybe I'm being unreasonable. Maybe it's because of my secret fascist tendencies, fascistity, or whatever you call me, right? Okay, so here's what was originally presented to me. And this is why I don't trust anything you or people on your side say, right? So it sounded to me, and this might be my bad, maybe it's my misunderstanding. It sounded to me initially like you were saying that IBM had made a cataloging system for Jewish people in concentration camps for Nazi Germany.
Then it sounded to you correctly, Destiny. Or as you might put it, true. I love it when he says that. True. Can we maybe try to talk normal and be less annoying? I got news for you. Nothing is cringe. All right? Because cringe is a verb. As in, the way you talk makes me cringe. As in, internet slang makes most people, even young people, cringe. Apartheid is not a meme. Apartheid is a system of racial segregation and second-class citizenship. It has been found throughout history in places like Germany and South Africa and Israel and the United States. A meme is like a picture of Kermit the Frog sipping tea and saying something clever like, your opinions don't pay my bills.
That's what it sounded like to me. Holy fuck. But now that I've read like 2 sentences on a wiki, and now that I'm asking you a few more questions, it sounds like what actually happened was they made a tabulation system for their census in 1933. This is a way. And then when you tell me, like, did you know that they ask questions about like race? We do that today with our census, of course. That's how you do a census. Yeah.
Mr. Spaghetti, have some humility. It's so embarrassing. Edwin Black, the author of IBM in the Holocaust, had a team of researchers comb through archives, documents, interviewed eyewitnesses. He's an award-winning historian. You've read 2 Wikipedia sentences and you're talking about census? You don't know a census from a frog's pee hole. IBM created a census to identify people by their race so that they could be stripped of their property and their rights and ultimately their lives. That is not what the United States uses their census for, at least not yet. We'll see what happens if the Republicans win.